Welcome to the Gridiron Unfiltered podcast, powered by Recon Sports, the show where we take a deep dive into the world of sports performance. I'm your host, Danny Davis, and today we've got a great guest for you, an absolute expert when it comes to not just strength and conditioning, but speed development. He's trained athletes and coaches at the professional, collegiate, and high school level, with some athletes representing Team USA and Team Italy. He's the founder of Athletics Westchester and the creator of events like the Armory Combine and the Northeast Speed Summit, both known for using diagnostic tools to assess and enhance sprinting and jumping capabilities. Coach Dom Zanot, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you, Danny. Ready to get this started?
Heck yeah. Coach, I was listening to a podcast the other day with Jim Trussell, and he was saying that back in the day, they only recruited speed athletes or track guys over weight room guys. What does he mean when he says that?
Okay, so what he means is, can the weight room express itself in the competitive environment? Okay, and the place where you can express yourself in a competitive environment other than football that's measurable is track and field. So you take an offensive or defensive lineman in high school, both are very strong. They can both bench 350 pounds. They can both squat 500 pounds. Say they can each power clean 330 pounds. Let's say they're both 6 feet 3 inches tall, and they're both 285 pounds. So they're applicable and very comparable in terms of their weight room. They both have quality film. Which athlete is going to be recruitable to a Power 4 school like Ohio State? Well, who can express their power and strength and speed best in a competitive environment? One athlete can throw the shot put 60 feet, throw the discus 180 feet, while the other one doesn't participate in track and field at all. The 60-foot shot put and 180-foot discus throw is going to be the recruitable athlete because they demonstrated they can express their weight room in a competitive environment.
Interesting. Do you think that, is there maybe the inside O-line, like the trenches, are they more weight room and it's the skills that are track and field? Is it a combination of both?
Well, it's definitely a combination of both. You look at this all the time. We'll look at a running back, 5'10", 210 pounds. That's very common in high school. And it's very common to see 5'10", 210 pound running backs, bench pressing 300 in high school, squatting 400, power cleaning 300. Those are all really good weight room numbers, and it demonstrates that both those kids are very powerful. However, if there's a 5'10", 210 pound running back that can run a 10.90 100-meter dash, then that running back has shown the ability to express their power and strength in the weight room in a competitive environment. Where the running back that is not running, is not sprinting, or let's say even long jumping or triple jumping, then it's unknown. And so when Trussell meant like those are weight room guys, those are the guys that are putting themselves out there in a competitive environment to express their power, to express their speed, to express their strength. And what's interesting is you'll see a lot of running backs. And I say a lot, there's quite a few. Running is the first name of the position. And they're choosing not to run.
Interesting.
So, it's pretty straightforward in terms of what Trussell meant by that. It's a straightforward argument. Yes, you can be strong, and it's really important to be strong, but you need to express that.
So it's almost like, what track and field brings to the table in terms of football is, one, you're sprinting, you are running, training for that, short distances, power, and then now being able to demonstrate those times because they're actually being tracked, quote, professionally and not just maybe in a stopwatch during practice. Coaches are able to now use those track and field times as a metric in their recruiting process because they trust that a lot more than, say, just, hey, here's his 40-yard dash time on our stopwatch on a random Friday.
Absolutely. And, the other part about track and field is So you have FAT timing, fully automatic timing. That means the gun starts the clock and a camera finishes the event in a sprint. So you have no human error, zero. It is 100% the number one tool to have complete truth. The other part of this, which is really important, is that when you're in a meet, not only are you being timed, but you're competing against others. So what it's demonstrating is in a high pressure environment that you are able to perform at high speeds and you're able to rise to the occasion of a high pressure environment, which every single possession, every single play is a high pressure environment, like a track and field competition at every position in the game of football, especially at the highest levels. So it's also demonstrating like how much of a competitor are you? Are you able to handle yourself in these very, very high stressed situations, which says if you can handle yourself in that, you could probably handle yourself when you're playing in front of 60,000, 70,000 people and you're on national television.
Big time. Big time. And now you and I have talked about this a lot, and you've done some research and some studies and advised some different companies on putting some of this together. But schools now looking at historical track data, and now almost to the NFL, you see a lot of the top speed athletes that are out there in the NFL right now. If you were to go back into their high school days, they were top track performers. And now colleges and schools are trying to look at a correlation between this. And it's really important now for kids trying to get recruited to that next level. I think you bring up some really good points on having that another almost a stat in your arsenal, a stat in your profile that says not only, hey, I'm this fast, but I'm training this way. I'm training for this. I'm training to be fast. I'm training to be explosive. I'm not just sitting underneath a squat rack, not practicing any running as a running back. Really cool.
Yep. And, the same goes again for, like, we talk about the interior players, the offensive and defensive line, and so, some linebackers. There's other ways to express it. The shot put circle, you're expressing explosion. The discus circle, you're expressing explosion. You're expressing coordination and timing. You're expressing balance. Long jumpers, triple jumpers, high jumpers. You're expressing all those things that you see when the game of football is being played. So, and the other part about track and field, because it's standard, 100 meters is 100 meters. There's rules for long jump, triple jump, high jump, shot put, discus. Everything's public. It's not private. It's not hidden. What you do, you are going to have it on your athletic.net profile, your mile split profile. This isn't a private combine that only releases certain numbers to certain schools. When you are involved in track and field, you are obviously, truly, like, you're putting yourself out in the public environment, and the public can access that for free, which means there's no bias.
I remember when I was a junior in high school is when I was first told almost what you just said, and being able to do the shot and discus to have that measurable stat to show how explosive I was. The problem I ran into trying to get into it late in my high school career was the technique on how to do the shot put, how to do the discus. I didn't have the technique, so I didn't have great numbers, and it showed I was less explosive. So what would be your advice to athletes when they should get started learning that technique when it comes to the shot and discus?
Well, yeah, that's a really good question, because the shot put and discus they're clearly strength and power events, and then they are also technical events. So, much like an offensive lineman learning pass protection, there's a technical part to that. A defensive lineman learning pass rushing techniques, a receiver running routes, and so on and so forth. There's a technical component to it. And, some kids are not blessed with a coach to teach them the technical components. That is very difficult. So the earlier you can figure out the technique, the more you can express your power later and not worry about the technique. So, some of this, it's a difficult thing for some kids, and I really respect it, because They're capable, but they're not being coached in a way that they can best express their weight room numbers or their athleticism. And that's why, you'll see some of the kids around the country, you look at Texas high school football, Duncanville, for example, is great high school football, public school. Their track and field coaches are awesome. So these kids are getting high quality football instruction. They're also getting high quality track and field instruction. So these kids are getting coached in how to be better, not just being better, all year round. And it's one of the reasons why Duncanville produces a significant amount of Power 4 football players, is because these guys are really good at football and they're really good at expressing it, sprinting, jumping, hurdling, throwing.
So when we talk about expressing that speed, let's dive into the football world a little bit and talk about something that almost everyone knows in the 40-yard dash. I think it's one of those metrics that someone hears and your common fan would know if that's good or bad. If you hear a wide receiver running a 4.240, he's moving. If he does 12 reps on the bench press, I don't know, is that good or bad? So the 40-yard dash is very common, but for the fans that maybe think that these players are just stepping up to a line, putting their hand down, and sprinting, break down the 40-yard dash, the different components that go into it, and how these athletes are really almost training year-round for that one event.
Yeah, so the 40-yard dash is en route to a 100-meter sprint. So what you are doing in a 40 is very similar to what you would do to train for a world-class race in a 100-meter dash. And I say that because you need all the key performance indicators of a world-class 100-meter to run a world-class 40. So I'll start, right? We can go step by step. I won't go through every single step, but we'll go through enough. So obviously you have to put yourself in the right position to accelerate just from your stance. So there are kids, when I say kids, like high school kids and college kids, that could be better immediately just by improving their three-point stance in the 40-yard dash to set themselves to have better angles. There are many common mistakes we see. Their feet are too close to the start line. Their back is rounded. They're losing, force and power because of a rounded back, and so on and so forth. Okay. Now your first step measures the amount of force you're able to put into the ground. That's your first step. So you get your peak force within, we're going to say, 3 feet is your peak force. Peak force really matters because your first step, whether you are a offensive lineman, a defensive lineman, a linebacker, running back, defensive back, if I missed a position, we'll call it tight ends, we'll hybrid tight ends, H-backs. That first step is the force you're producing. So your peak force is first step. So everyone can benefit from the first step. So the 40-yard dash is demonstrating who can get their body moving fast and put a lot of force in the ground. Steps 3 through 5 is peak power. So your peak power is going to be expressed, let's just say, within 5 to 7 yards of a football play. And then once you're past the peak power, your body's in motion and you're accelerating. Okay, that's an important skill for every single position. And then as you reach, let's say, the 20-yard mark in a 40, now you're moving at either maximum velocity or close to it. And really what you're demonstrating is how much momentum you have. Your mass times velocity. So the big guys that are moving really, really fast from 20 to 40 are producing a lot of momentum. And when you're dealing with a collision sport, momentum matters.
Big time. Big time. And that's why you see, when you see like a 4.9, maybe a 5-second 40 of a guy that's 315, 330 pounds, that's moving because that's a lot of weight and a lot of force coming behind him moving at that speed.
Significant. Now, here's some math that's, I think, important to note. I've tested thousands of high school athletes. Every single athlete that has had a momentum score of 1,000 Newton seconds has received a football scholarship at some level, whether it's Division II, FCS, FBS, Power 4, 1,000. So when you think about it, right, what does it take to run 1,000 Newton seconds for momentum? Well, it's a 100 kilogram athlete, 100 kilos, that's 220 pounds, running 10 meters per second. 10 meters per second, there's a portion of that sprint where you're running 10 flat 100 pace. A portion of it, not the entire one.
Which is moving.
It is very rare for a 100 kilo high school athlete to be able to run 10 meters per second. Very rare. In college, you're going to get a few more because the athlete's more mature and more developed. But so think about that. That is significantly fast. So if you're running 10 meters per second at 100, at 100 kilos, you're capable of running an 11.00 100 meter dash. The 11.00 is not it. Some people are like, well, Texas kids are running 10.3. Okay. 11 flat is very fast. And if you're 100 kilos and you're running 11 flat, then you belong as a football scholarship player if you can play. If you can run 10.5 at 100 kilos in high school, then you're pretty much on your way to being an NFL player. You're going to be a professional athlete. So this momentum score matters. Now, obviously, the bigger you are, the slower your numbers are going to be, and the lighter you are, the faster your numbers are going to be. But 1,000 Newton seconds is then 100% college football scholarship.
Interesting. That's really good to know for any fans and any athletes out there trying to get to the next level. We're going to go into another segment now. We're going to do a sudden change. The sudden change is brought to you by Nico Stones. Nico Stones just updated their site. They're looking better than ever. Their new Essentials collection is exclusive with just a few hand-picked, versatile style bracelets, earrings, made to be worn every day. Whether you're dressing up, dressing down, or somewhere in between, it just fits all. Definitely worth checking out nicostones.com. So let's transition into how these speed metrics are being captured. We have GPSs, we have lasers, we have RFID tags. For fans that have no idea that this is going on, give us a quick rundown on some of the different ways that teams, organizations, programs, combines are tracking speed data.
Okay, so I'm going to go bottom up. So when I say bottom, I don't mean less than, I just mean what's most common. So most common is right now are the GPS wearables. So you put on essentially a tank top that's very fitting, and it tracks your GPS. So it tracks every step that you take. It can track your speeds, the number of, the amount of yards that you moved in a practice, the percentage of your movement that was at a certain speed. So you can really track load management through GPS. And they're very effective for load management. The speeds in GPS are all over the place because there can be some inaccuracies. So are you wearing the wearable outside? Are you wearing the wearable inside? Well, inside versus outside with GPS is going to impact the accuracy of the reading. Generally, is it going to be correct? Yeah, generally. But specifically, could there be a miles per hour reading if you're being, tested on that in your practice? Could there be a difference based on being inside versus outside? Absolutely. So that would be I would say the most common thing that's taking place. And I would say the benefit of those primarily is the total yardage and intensity produced in a practice. So you could see load management. Like, do you need a day where it's a little bit lighter, or can you continue pushing forward? Does that answer your question about the wearables?
100%. And this tugs at a certain level of my heart because I deal with GPSs the most. And folks, when you think about a GPS, it gets you from place A to place B. What's the total distance? Great for measuring player load. Does he need to take a day off? Did we go too far? But if you were to look at your GPS while you're driving, there's a speedometer on there. It's kind of accurate, not as accurate as your speedometer on your car, but close. You probably don't even notice it, but maybe it's just a couple off to where now you're looking at that over time, and looking at trying to get max speeds over the course of a year, you're not even close. You're not even close. So talk to us about the other ways that is maybe able to get accurate speed, velocity, acceleration, things like that.
So in the NFL, they use RFID chips, which are very different than GPS. So an RFID chip, obviously, you have a microchip. It is placed in the shoulder pads, or it's placed, it's a wearable, obviously, but it's placed on the body. And then there are sensors that are placed throughout the facility. So think of it this way, like an RFID chip would be something closer to being hardwired, where GPS would be like Wi-Fi, RFID chip would be more closer to being hardwired. The ultimate hardwire is an FAT timing system because it is literally hardwired from the gun to the camera. The RFID would be the closest thing to being hardwired. So they have devices around the inside of the stadiums, whether they're indoors or outdoors, it doesn't matter. And these chips have local accuracy, like where GPS is global, the RFID is local to the actual place in which it exists. Did I explain that?
You did. So how are they wearing these devices? Is it RFID tag in the shoulder pads? Is it on the body?
It's usually it's in the shoulder pads.
Interesting. And I don't know a whole lot of teams doing I think it's a new RFID. I think it's a little bit newer, a little bit more expensive. But with the GPSs, it blows my mind that today in 2025, if you were to go Google this and just GPS being worn, you're going to see a bunch of male athletes wearing sports bras. That's how they wear them. And the fact that they can't figure out a better way to place them, wear them, it really blows my mind. But in an RFID tag, it seems so much more accurate, so much easier to carry around or to place on the shoulder pads or somewhere on the body. And it makes so much more sense hearing you say that it's being captured within the arena, within the stadium with these sensors and not being sent up to a satellite. And now coaches are wondering, why isn't my speed data accurate right now? Why do I got guys with 40 miles an hour?
Right. So this is, and we'll get into the next part, which is computer vision, which is another area of testing. So when you look at the NFL, they're using RFID. Their metrics are as accurate as you're going to find, given the limitations that they have. When you compare NFL speeds to college football speeds, comparing them to either GPS or you're comparing them to computer vision, the NFL speeds are often a little bit slower than what you'll see produced maybe in a college football game or a high school football game. And you wonder, wait, is that even possible? Well, the reason why is the tool of measuring in the NFL is hardwired to their local stadium, where GPS is global, and then computer vision, what's the quality of the film? So yeah, you can absolutely measure speed with AI and computer vision. But when you're talking about a game of football and you're talking about a surface, is it grass, is it turf? What's the quality of the camera? What's the angle of the camera? When you put all that together, it makes it more challenging. Now, it's fun to see all this and it's fun to track, but when you're talking about really comparing and having a standardized protocol, there are three different systems out there, and they're not all the same, even though the public's receiving miles per hour, which we all think is the same. Not all miles per hour are created equally because the systems that are being used to measure it.
Wow, that's really good insight. Coach Z, I really appreciate you coming on here. It gave us phenomenal insight into high school athletes trying to get to the next level, what they can do with their speed, some extracurricular activities like track and field that not only help them be better athletes, but better present themselves to the next level, and great insight as to what college and professional teams are doing to track speed with different wearables, RFID tags, lasers, AI, really good stuff. Coach, where can go?
Could I mention one more thing?
Please.
So, and I say this I talk about this all the time, and we don't want to de-emphasize, you got to be a good football player first. Like, it's just like when you if you're putting a college transcript together, you have to have really good grades with really difficult classes first. Then your ACT and SAT are an added value. So you don't want to spend all of your time just saying, oh, well, if I run the 110.7, I'm an automatic scholarship football athlete. No, you have to be a good football player first. You got to demonstrate that you are super competitive and you're making plays and you are, demonstrating good technique and all those other things. And then the added value of far shot put throw, discus throw, sprint, jump, so on and so forth. That's an added value. So we don't want to change our priorities. We want to make sure that our football film is the number one factor.
100%. 100%. Coach, where can people find you to get more great advice like this? Where can people find you at?
Well, I'm pretty active on social media. My Instagram page is Athletics Westchester. And that's the one I usually am, posting information on. And I try to post information that is useful and motivating. And I also post a lot of practice footage just so that athletes, coaches, and parents and anyone else can see, all right, what does it take to improve in these areas? And if you just watch our Instagram page, these practice habits, these exercises, we always say, do what works. And we do what works over and over and over again. That's right. How you get results.
Do what works and follow the experts, folks. Go check them out. Big thanks again to Coach Dom Zanot for sharing his thoughts and insights. We appreciate you coming on here, Coach. Make sure, fans, you subscribe to the Fan Day Nation so you don't miss out on future episodes as we continue to go behind the scenes and take a deep dive into the world of sports performance. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.